I'd like to thank our sponsors here, Weta Workshop, who have been gratefully have provided us with this presentation. Jesse is going to present on the future of storytelling, including Dr. Grordbort and the development from comic to film. So welcome everybody, and I'd like to introduce Jesse.
Cool. All right, so hey everyone. So welcome to ComicFest. I'd like to just really quickly thank all the people that have been involved this year so that I can be here and talk to you guys. So today we're gonna walk through some of the rules and principles that artists at Weta Workshop use when we analyze an image or we analyze an IP such as Dr. G or Dr. Grordbort's. I'll talk briefly about who I am, why you're listening to me, and what I've done. I'll go through my top 6 design elements that I think are the most important. And then we have 15 minutes at the end for some Q&A, 15-20 minutes. But if you do have any questions throughout the presentation, feel free to just raise your hand and we can have a chat. And so, cool. Get into it. Oh, this is Gimbal, by the way, our little mascot friend from Dr. G. So he's going to come along with us. We'll see what he has to say, but I'm unconvinced. So like I said, my name's Jesse. Before we really get into it, I'd like a show of hands real quick. So who's an artist? Anyone an artist? Everyone in the room hopefully should put their hand up. Students? Sweet. And professionals? Cool, cool. People that kind of came in thinking there was coffee and muffins? No one? Everyone. All right, cool, sweet. So who am I? Like I said, Jesse is my name. I was born in November of 1996 in a place called Werribee, Australia, which is pretty Australian. 2 parents, Gary and Roz. Growing up in semi-rural Victoria, I got a lot of experiences and insights as a kid that ensured my love for environments and for kind of immersive spaces. From scouts to cadets, when I was younger, if I wasn't drawing, painting, or doing some other kind of art thing, I was either fishing, camping, hunting. Still to this day, I'm pretty convinced that my love of environments, my love of environment art, comes from my love of the outdoors and spaces. So ironic because I have an inside desk job. So these are some of the things I've worked on in the past. I started work at a very young age, at about 12, washing dishes for my brother in kitchens. I've worked in the game industry all my professional life, coming up on 7 years now. So I've worked on a few titles you might recognise: The Sims, Real Racing, whilst I was at EA, Zombie Riot and Archangel at studios like Playside in Melbourne and Mode Games in Sydney, as well as Need for Speed as well. So some personal work of mine. I don't know how well you can see it on a projector, but I'll just flip through this stuff. So I do work in my personal time all the time, not just away from work, not just during work. So what is Dr. G, right? Like the fictional universe that contains Dr. Grordbort's. It's the brainchild of Weta Workshop, concept designer, game director, and my boss and buddy, Greg Broadmoor. It all started as a series of drawings and acrylic paintings that Greg made. Richard Taylor, the owner of Weta Workshop, and Greg conceived the idea to bring these fantastical kind of weapons and collection of items to the unsuspecting public back in 2007. So that's when all this started. Since then, Greg and Weta Workshop have released a cosmic cornucopia of books and artwork, ray guns, both miniature and full size, to keep everyone's interplanetary enemies at bay. So fast forward to the end of 2017, 10 years later, there I am, FaceTiming with these two guys, our game director, Greg Broadmoor, on the left, and our art director, Steve Lambert, on the right. Yeah, right, and also middle center row. So I was in connection with them from December to January of 2017-18, and after some discussion, I started at Weta Workshop in March. and helped to ship Weta Workshop's first ever game. So it's a pretty epic undertaking, to be honest. So how do we go from comic books to games in mixed reality? That's the question, right? So back in the long, long time ago, Greg came up with 3 comic books. Victory, Onslaught, and Triumph are their names. It's a satirical and dark, humoured look at Lord Coxswain and his attempts at British colonialism, but in space. After being discovered by Roni Abovitz, being the CEO and founder of Magic Leap, Greg began his campaign to create the first ever mixed reality game in the world of Dr. G. Gimbal, thanks for that. Cool. So let me set the scene for you guys. The evil robots from the robot planet have chosen this building, this very room, to stage their invasion of Earth. Through portholes in your walls and floor, you are Earth's foremost defender against the robot onslaught. Adventure has never been bigger, gameplay has never been this immersive, with enemies so believable that you have to take cover behind your own couch. Probably not. Cool. So here's the trailer. So I'll just quickly play the trailer for Dr. G now, just to give you an insight into kind of what we're all about. Cool. I'm gonna play again. 1 second, sorry guys. Cool. So. Easy as that. See? Computers. All right. So when recreating anything, artists prefer to go back to the source of information. True? So drawing a car, you look at cars, right? Drawing a monster, you go and look at creatures and you look at insects. If you're drawing money, you go to the ATM, right? Makes sense. At Workshop, we isolate our 6 key principles of design into line, shape, texture, form, color, and value. when we analyze any form of visual expression, consciously considering it in terms of the elements and principles of design gives us a broad platform on which to base our judgments, right? When we analyze, I'm going to start again. Although the list of elements and principles seems fairly straightforward, there are many apparent contradictions, omissions, and variations. Some classify form as an element, some list mass and rhythm, others leave out value, texture and form. Some consider direction a principle rather than an element. The more you read, the more confusing it gets. So the whole thing is no one's right, no one's wrong. So the elements and principles of design, they're not a surefire recipe for artist success, but they are an extremely useful tool for understanding visual arrangement as well as an image in a whole, right? So when creating Dr. G Invaders, we went back to the source, Greg's comic books, the books I spoke about earlier. We begin by asking ourselves, what makes an image? Well, often an image, it's merely ordinary things, composed in an ordinary manner, with an ordinary setting. Usually an image relies on its lighting, its mood, or a vibe that it's trying to share with you. It relies on that really to make the image interesting. But today we're looking at the key elements of an image that make up its design, obviously. So we'll get into that. So we're starting with line. So the linear marks made with a pen or brush, or the edge created when two shapes meet, is a line, right? Out of the 6 elements of design, line is the strongest. It's the most important and the most influential. Without line, there can be no shape. Without shape, there can be no form. Without form, there can be no texture. Lines are powerful tools that can be used smartly to lead the viewer's eye towards the point of interest in a photograph, altering the overall feel and mood of an image. Lines can be vertical, horizontal, diagonal or curved. Lines can be short or tall, can be thick or thin. Lines can lead you away or move you forward in an image. A line's emotional effect on an image cannot be overlooked. They sometimes feel restful, soothing, rigid, active. There's plenty of words. As you can see in the example image, line thickness, direction, angle change a lot, setting a really solid foundation for the completion of this image on the right. Gimbal. Oh, terrible. Cool, so shape. So a shape is a self-contained, defined area of geometric squares and circles and that kind of stuff, or organic, free-form shapes. A positive shape automatically creates a negative shape. So what do I mean by this? Well, if we have a square in the middle of a page, both the square itself and the outer area are both considered a shape. So when we look at shapes, we look at, okay, well, here's a triangle, but also the shape that the triangle makes around it is also a shape. Shapes are fundamental design building blocks. Shapes, geometric or organic, add interest. Shapes are defined by boundaries, mainly, such as lines or colour, and they are often used to emphasise a portion of the page. Everything is ultimately a shape. So you must always think in terms of how the various elements and shapes blend together, right? And how those shapes are interacting and interesting. It's hypercritical, but it's all right, I suppose. So texture is incredibly important. Texture is probably my favorite. Adding interest in variety, texture can be defined as the surface quality of a shape. Rough, smooth, soft, hard, glossy. It's counterintuitive to think about texture when it's a 2D piece, right? And it's never going to be touched and felt. However, textures can create more 3-dimensional appearance on a 2-dimensional surface. So for mixed reality, it also helps build an immersive and tactile world. If you can relate to a texture that you know, everyone knows what wood looks like and brick looks like and metal looks like. If you can relate to that, it increases that immersion, you know? So texture can be leveraged to control the way a space feels. Texture is most details and exists in an image all over it, really. If they don't affect silhouette, it'll be controlled by the use of texture. So anything that's not a form that breaks up that silhouette, that look, it'll be a texture. He's right with that one. It is way more like pizzazz. Cool. So form can only be described as the visible shape or configuration of something. And we all know light, the natural agent that stimulates sight and makes everything visible. So form or light in an image are incredibly important also. Form and light helps us to understand and decode an object rendered in 2D. Form and light can be used to create a specific feel, mood, or vibe in an image. Without form in an image, things will look flat and uninteresting. Lighting and forms can be used in many different ways. Both top and bottom images here display form. As you can see, when you isolate the light highlights in the top image, these very strong, bold light highlights, and the overlap that occurs, you can see this form. Same with the bottom image. It's much more realistic, much softer, but still contains form. So both of these images show and demonstrate form, but just in two very different styles. Oh. That was weird. Thanks, Gimbal. He could be. All right, so I'm going to ask you guys a question. What's your favorite color? Blue. Blue? Why?
Because my eyes are blue.
That's a perfectly good reason. What's your favorite color? Yep, you.
Green.
Green? Why?
It's the color of nature.
Nice, nice. All right, so two questions, right? It's like, what's your favorite color and why? The first question, super easy. Red, blue, green, whatever. The second question, a little bit harder, right? You have to think about it. So believe it or not, there's actually a reason why we're attracted to certain colors. Every color in the rainbow makes us think of a different emotion. Even though it's something often that's subconscious, color is one of the most powerful and obvious elements that we use as artists. It also allows us to show a lot of information in an image very quickly. An image says 1,000 words, we've all heard that, right? It's more like color says 1,000 words. Fill in the blanks and convey a specific message. Color is light reflected off objects. Color has three main characteristics. So this is something I always try and remember is hue or its name, such as red, green, blue. Value, which is how light or dark that color is. And intensity, which is how bright or dull, also known as saturation. So how close that color is to its rawest form versus how close it is to grey.
And of course, you've got the point that was made, green is the colour of life,
Mm-hmm.
except that looking at that, you get more nauseating sickness, gas, so it's
Right.
like evoking two things at once.
Correct. So the artist in this image probably used green for the fact that it's exactly that. It's a little bit sickening. It's a little bit off-putting because it's got some yellows in it too, and it's quite a cool green, blue-green that's supported by some warm tones in the bottom. You can see. So definitely good pick up for sure. He's not even a dad. Cool. So what makes up color? Well, red, yellow, and blue. We all know that. Are the three primary colors. From them, all other colors can be made. So this is we remember this from school. The primary colors cannot be mixed from any other colors, so they exist in their purest form. These three hues are the foundation of all color theory. So blue, green, and red. Violet, yellow, and teal are the three secondary colors. They fall between each of the primaries. Each one is mixed from the two primaries either side of it. So if you take blue and green, you get teal. We all know how that works. So compound colors are mixed from all three primaries. They are all the browns and earths and khaki colors. So if you took all three primaries, red, green, and blue, and you mix them all together, you'd get brown. Complementary colors are colors that are directly opposite each other on the color wheel. For example, teal and orange, green and purple, all that kind of stuff. Complementary colors, we just went over that, sorry. Complementary colors are colors that are directly opposite one another on the color wheel. For example, teal and orange, yeah, we just went over that. So maximum color contrast exists between complementary colors. What do I mean by that? Well, they contain no more than 2 primaries, no black or white. So they're the purest color. A tint is any color that contains a mix of white or black. So we can tint any of these colors, adding a little bit of black or a little bit of white. And that's considered a shade. Okay, so when I do talks, I actually really like to kind of give out a resource, something that is useful, something you can take home. So this is an infographic that I always go back to, Color and Film Movie Color Scheme Cheat Sheet. It's great. So I've got it here somewhere. Let's have a look if I can get it and show you guys. I don't really know how to do that. 1 second. Can we get a JPEG up on here? So you'll see why in a second why I always go back to this. It's a huge, big image. Can we zoom in too? Okay, so real long image, but we can see here we've got. Cool. Can I move up and down? Yeah. Sweet. So we've got reds, pinks, orange, yellow. We're going into our teals and blues now, and it moves through the hue spectrum. All right, but it gives us examples from films that we all know. And keywords that are invoked by these colors. So I use this all the time, anytime I'm working with color, and I really suggest you guys have a look at this as well. So the way that, I don't know how to get rid of this now. Let's do, whoop. Hey, I worked it up. All right. Cool. So the way we can get to this is if you go to this link, feel free to take a photo if you want to, or if you Google The Psychology of Color and Film by Daily Infographic, you'll find that out. Right, a few people taking photos. I'll leave this up for a second. Cool. Sweet. So value. So value is simply the lightness or darkness of an object. It's probably the most simple one, sometimes referred to as tone. Value is used to control atmosphere and lighting, which is true, draw interest and show detail. So anytime we like to show detail in an image, we're using contrast or value to do that. In any painting, photograph or design, the area of highest contrast between light and dark is where you'll find the most amount of interest. So that's where it draws the eye instantly. So anytime that you want to ensure that a viewer's eye goes to exactly where you want it to, increase the contrast in that area. So, but the thing is, color and value are unique and they're separate elements. It's worth keeping in mind in your work that without value, color can't exist. With too harsh a value, color ceases to exist. So what do I mean by that? Well, I mean, if we increase our value so high that we get white, color can't exist, right? And we decrease it so far that we get black, we also don't get color. So color sits between the middle of the highest point of value and the lowest point of value. Kinda. Cool. All right, so the best way to master these elements is to kind of experiment and practice. So break images you see and love down into their elements, into their principles. Once you see that something as simple as making a small adjustment to the color scheme or a small adjustment to the shape, can be the kind of aha moment that you need to elevate your designs and really make meaningful and effective content. So I've run through that pretty quick. We've got a lot of time for questions. I'll flip through some art as well. But thank you for your time. So that's pretty much it. Cool. So, has anyone got any questions?
Hi. When you're rendering something that's gone from one format, say Sonic the Hedgehog as originally envisioned, to movie, and you sort of make these artistic decisions, I'm going to change these things for reasons. Do we need that? Oh, sorry. I was asking about rendering material from original and, keeping true to canon, and referenced Sonic the Hedgehog, where the original had lots of distinctive features like smooth skin, sort of, very animalistic, and the film that's coming out has got like way different. So at the same time, you've got that going from 2D to 3D, and you want to make it more real. So how do you actually get the right balance of bringing something fresh and new and connecting, and at the same time respecting true fans?
With great difficulty, as obviously can be seen with the new Sonic movie. I'll keep my opinions to myself when it comes to the Sonic movie, but look, it's a difficult job. And what you need to do is you try to make the best decision you can make as an artist at the time, but to try and get the best result, and trying to stick to that, but also marry maybe a new media like augmented reality or film. Working with others is kind of what should be done most. Get as many opinions from as many people that you can to catch inconsistencies or maybe not the best decisions early. So that's what I would say. Just lots of critique, lots of feedback.
Go diverse teams.
That's the one. Any other questions? Oh, yeah.
I'll bring the microphone.
I was just wondering if you could go over some basic techniques you use to get texture in your images and concept art to give an atmosphere or something.
Yeah. So I'm not the best concept artist. What I do is more real-time 3D kind of stuff, but the approach is similar. It's the same, right? So when I'm texturing anything, I try and balance everything I can between the color and between where I'm putting detail is one of the kind of key things you need to think about. Where am I putting this detail and why am I putting this detail here? So if you think about what I spoke about throughout the presentation, when I look at an image, I really try and keep in mind what I want from this image. What is the end goal? What am I trying to show? What am I trying to give to the person that's going to be viewing this image? Now, when it comes to texture, I would use texture in areas that I want the highest amount of interest, right? So it's about balance. In terms of techniques, I use a lot of just straight brushstrokes and stuff in my textures. But when it comes to realism, I'll either do something like generate textures from node graphs, or use a photo, or stuff like that. So just comes down most of the time, though, to just straight up painting, just to get exactly what I want. So does that answer your question? Yeah. Awesome. Sweet. Anyone else? Questions? We do have a prize for people asking questions, so...
We've got 4 prizes.
I've got 4 prizes. Now the hands go up. All right. Bribery, I see how it is, it's fine.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but did you say you were born in 1998? You've been working for 7 years in the industry.
Yes, that's correct. 1996, I was born. Pardon, what was that?
How old were you when you started working professionally?
When I started working, my first job, when I started at EA, I was 15 turning 16, pretty sure.
Bennett. Right, Flynn, good luck.
We'll look up back.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask, how on earth did you manage to get to work at Weta then?
Well, I asked myself that. No, look, at the end of the day, regardless of how good you are or regardless of how old you are, it comes down to knowing people, getting along with people, and then building those connections and relationships. So it's not what you know, but who you know in life that gets you places. And that's pretty much how I got into Workshop.
Cool, thank you.
Oh, yep, that one.
Why did you choose Dr. Grordbort to make into a mixed reality game?
I didn't get to choose. The decision gets made higher up, and I think Dr. G was actually a really, really good test bed for the Magic Leap. It was probably the one game that needed to be done in augmented reality, and it couldn't be done in any other platform. So I chose to work on the team, and I chose to work at Weta Workshop because of not only the great content that Workshop create, but the incredible people that are there as well. So
This has sort of been covered already in some parts, but what advice would you give to a young artist who is wanting to get into the industry?
young artists wanting to get into the industry. Stay optimistic, number one, I would say. Number two, build relationships. And number three, study every single day. Be relentless in your study, be relentless in your work ethic, and be relentless in your passion, I would say. Yep.
Excuse me, kia ora. I'm an archivist, so that's the perspective that this question comes from. You said earlier that artists like to use source material, go back to the source material as inspiration for their work. So what are some of the source materials or sources that you and your colleagues draw from?
Everything. Mainly for myself, everyday life. Draw what I see in front of me. But when it comes to getting, like, I've got a real goal or I've got something set at work that I need to achieve, I'll just jump straight on Google, and if I'm making, I tried to keep it kind of in the same realm, but different enough that it might spark a motivation that I didn't previously foresee. So if I'm making a robot, I might look at old tractors, and it might give me the inspiration of, the design of the front or something. Anything mechanical, if I was making a robot, or if I was sculpting a tree, I might go and look at microorganisms and the way that they're constructed, because that might give me inspiration behind, my alien leaves that I'm designing. So I always come back to the real world, but I try and keep a little bit loose with what I end up Googling, just because it gives me free wins, Yep.
Simple question. There was a figure before with a coat, like
Oh, yep.
four slims back there. They had quite textured arms. The material on the arms is just maybe it's a technical question. How did you fill that space, or how would somebody fill that space? Yeah, there we go. The arms have actually got ribbing or the materials.
So, are you talking about through here?
Yeah. So is that done? Is that just filled the whole thing, or do you do each little?
Well, so what we would do is when creating Dr. G's jacket, his lab coat, is each one of those panels would be a completely 3D panel in themselves, laid on top of each other. And then what we do is we use a process called texture baking or tangent normal baking to take all that detail and flatten it out onto the game mesh. So we have a high resolution mesh, and we have a low resolution, we have a high resolution thing and a low resolution thing. We take all the details and we place them on the low resolution thing. Is the best way I can kind of describe that process. But then, like I said before, I'd go in afterwards and I'd paint in the little highlights, like the little highlights you can see up in here and all that kind of stuff, just to give it a little bit more pop. So that's kind of how I'd go about doing that. Does that answer your question?
You do that, let's say if it's a 3D image and it's, if you've got so many images per second.
Yep.
You do it for each image?
No.
No, okay.
Nah. So we do it once, we feed it into the game engine, and then the game engine worries about what image per frame, you know, in 60 frames a second, what that looks like.
Okay.
Yeah, hi. I'm from the tech sector, sort of loosely, and there when we have people saying they want to get a start in it, they can either go through the formal study route or bootstrap and have their own GitHub and do things and, you know, have their portfolio. When you talk about doing study, can people trying to get into the art take the same approach that they do their fanzines, they do stuff at Zine Fest, or do they have to go through a more formal actual training and maybe go to UB or somewhere multimedia? You know, how do they get recognised for having the artwork?
Well, so there's two separate questions there. So the first one being, I'm just double checking whether I'm right. So first one being, sorry, what was the first question?
So 2 parts is, where do people get their skills,
yep,
and where do they show them so that they can actually, you know, say to somebody else, hey, I can do this thing, I'm great, hire me?
Yep, okay. So the first question, I don't think you need to technically go to school or get a degree or get a piece of paper at the end of anything that tells you can do something. Just sit at home and draw and get good and investigate 3D and, you know, just do whatever interests you. You can do it in your own time. You don't have to pay, you know, $50,000 and go away for 3 years and do nothing but that. If you're driven and you're motivated and you're organized, you can get the same result from just doing it at home. But in saying that, paying for a course will give you a structure. It will give you a system in place that you go every day and you do your thing and you go home. So it kind of trains you for work as well, which is good. But it just depends on the person. Like, it depends on who they are and what they're going to get out of it. So. And then the second part of the question, how do they get art in front of people? Well, the best way to do that is to go to meet and greets, go meet people, get in front of people, have your stuff prepared, but don't be pushy. Learn to kind of, you know, segue a bit into, can I show you my folio? Stuff like that. So, yeah, I would say, yeah, getting out there, talking to people, building relationships with people, and then once that's kind of done, then you can start to be like, oh, okay, can I have a job? That's kind of, so, yep.
Yeah, being parents, I got 2 boys who love drawing. And I'm just wondering, even for them and for the future younger ones, how important it is to have the real, you know, color and the paint on paper, the foundation, the old traditional way of drawing. And because nowadays people just start from the computer graphic software. And sometimes I noticed some weakness when they didn't have a very strong background in the traditional way.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I just wonder, how do you sort of allocate your energy and time in this both area, or you just say, well, I'm really great at graphic design software, and that's all I need to do. Yeah, I'm just wondering how you. And another question is, if they are really good at this moment, they got compliments from your peer, and do you actually have to worry about this online copyright thing, you know, sort of protect your artwork at this moment for a young age?
Well, okay, so the first question, I'll answer the first question first. I think fundamental study is incredibly important for everyone, regardless of where they are in their career. You know, you can always improve, and it's like building a house. You know, if your foundations are strong, then when you put a picture up on a wall, it's not going to fall down, right? But if your foundations are poor, then your walls are going to fall down around you. So I always try and keep my foundations up. And that doesn't mean I get to a point where I'm happy with my foundations and I stop, because if you don't use something, you'll lose it. I continue every single day as much as I can. Every spare moment that I have, I try and fill and occupy my brain with how I can improve or how I can practice or that kind of stuff, I would say. So, and the second part, what was the second question again, sorry?
If they have compliments from the peer and the people like their work, and
How they can protect that?
do you need to worry at an early age, late teens and
Late teens?
not to do with the age completely, but they already got, like, people want to maybe pay them something
Right.
for their work,
So,
and they are people happened before, like they took their work without credit to the person who created.
yeah, right.
I'm saying, when do you start thinking about doing this kind of like protect my work?
Probably before someone tries and steals it. I'd say if that's happened, I would very much put in place, legal things that mean people can't steal my work. But at the same time, theft of art is one of the most flattering things. So it's kind of two ways about it. But if someone is offering one of your sons who's in their late teens money for their work, that's incredible. So no, it's fine. Any part counts. So I would, definitely have them go further into that direction. Encourage that young entrepreneurial spirit to make money like that. So we've got questions like that.
Hi, this is a follow-on from our archivist question, except I'm a librarian, and I'm involved in trying to get more collections from galleries, libraries and archives and museums available online to inspire and create new knowledge and so forth. And I'm just wondering what do we need to do to support your work better? Have you ever used anything from galleries, libraries, archives and museums?
Me personally?
Yeah.
Or yeah, I've been to libraries. And
You're in one now.
I'm in one right now.
Yeah. And librarians organised this. So.
That's very true. Our comms specialist is actually an ex-librarian, Diane. So,
Yay!
I mean, what could libraries do to help workshop more? Is that what the question is?
No,
or
more
what could?
Yeah, artists generally.
Artists in general?
And workshop and, yeah.
Okay.
Like we put a lot of work into getting our collections online and available for others to use, and how do we get in front of you?
Okay, so there is a few places for my industry specifically that people kind of converge online. One of them is called ArtStation, ArtStation.com, and ArtStation's a great place. It's just a gallery like Instagram full of images, hundreds after hundreds of all different artists. If something picks your eye, you can click into it, go further into it, find out who did it, what they were about. There's descriptions, a whole bunch of other stuff. So that's one place, ArtStation, and Polycount as well is another forum, more of a forum, maybe less kind of interesting to you, but ArtStation I would say is definitely a good place to start. Chucking collections up on there definitely. So, okay.
Probably got time for another couple of questions.
I reckon.
We do have a question here. Here we go.
How much will the Invaders game cost?
So Invaders, the game is completely free, totally free, costs you nothing. The Magic Leap will cost you $3,000, New Zealand, 2.8 I think it is, something around there. Not currently available in New Zealand yet, but will be soon. Maybe you can ask Mum for Christmas, hey? Cool. One more question up.
How do you get the sort of metallic sheen?
Right. So the metallic sheen in games, good example. is done with a system called physically based rendering, or PBR. How do I describe this? Okay, so PBR, it controls two things. It basically asks us a question and says, okay, is this metal or is it not? Because in the world, you can either have things that are metal or things that are not metal. So we use a system like that, and we say, this panel here is metal, this one isn't, and the next one is. And then the middle panel will not look like metal, and the two other side will. So we use masks to do that, similar to the way that you might paint a wall. We'd paint a wall with metal, basically, but in-game or on the computer. Cool. Any other questions? All right, I'm going to ask you guys a question. Who can name me 3 of the elements of design that I spoke about today? Yeah, that's good. People listening, that's a lot. All right, I'm just going to close my eyes and point. You there? It's the one with glasses and green shirt. Perfect. Let's go a pass over there.
Here is one Weta Cave Studio tour pass. Compliments of Weta Workshop on Weta Cave.
Okay.
We have 3 more to go.
We do have 3 more to go. I'm trying to think of another question. Who can spell Grordbort backwards? It is on the screen. Go on. You can look.
I know. S-T R-O-B-D-R-O-R-G.
Ooh, he's got it.
Thank you.
Another one. Let's go a harder one this time. I'm looking at students this time. Okay. What is the color complementary to blue on the color wheel? Oh, we'll go up the back.
Red.
Nice. There's one. Oh, yeah. That's a good question. Name of the second Lord of the Rings movie. Beat ya. That's the one.
Hey, this is our very last Weta Studio tour pass given away.
That's it. Awesome.
Thank you so much, Jesse.
Cool. Well, thank you guys again. If anyone wants to get in contact with me for discussion or critique or criticism or questions that you didn't want to ask today, not criticism, that was a slip of the tongue. You can feel free to email me or jump on ArtStation, check out my ArtStation, check me a follow on Instagram. You can message me through there as well. So, was that a stretch or a question? Stretch. All right, awesome. Thanks, guys. Have a good day.
Thank you very much, Jesse. Just before anyone leaves, we have a quick 15-minute break. And then we've got a panel discussion on children's comics featuring Ant Sang, Sarah Lang, Katie O'Neill, Giselle Clarkson, and all the way from London, Roger Langridge. And everybody's welcome to attend. Thank you. Oh, and don't forget to get some free comics.